Are we facing a deliberate restriction of Nigeria's civic space? Or are we just ignorant of the workings of security agencies, especially when those workings involve national security? My guest believes the allegations of a shrinking civic space in Nigeria is not just an allegation, but fact. How so? We'll discuss in our interview segment. Meanwhile, our focus on the FCT takes us to what many are calling the straw that broke the camel's back when it comes to the relationship between the Nigerian citizen and security operatives. The arrest and release of the NLC President Joe Ajaero at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja and matters arising from that situation. Let's get started. This is Dateline Abuja. Hello and welcome to Dateline Abuja. I'm Kayla Megwa. Let's begin with an update of the major stories from Nigeria's presidency. President Bola Tinubu has made clear Nigeria's firm commitment to addressing climate change in a manner that aligns with the country's energy security objectives, whilst affirming Nigeria's readiness to adopt global strategies for sustainability. President Bola Tinubu said this on Wednesday during a private meeting with His Majesty King Charles III at Buckingham Palace in London, highlighting the enduring and cherished relationship between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. The special advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, says this will be the two leaders' first meeting since they met in Dubai at COP28 Climate Summit last year. President Bola Tinubu has welcomed the National Bureau of Statistics' new report, which states that Nigeria recorded another trade surplus in the second quarter of 2024, hitting 6.95 trillion naira. According to the report, the current surplus is 6.60% higher than the 6.52 trillion naira surplus recorded in the first quarter of the year. The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics reports that the second quarter surplus was essentially driven by exports to Europe, the United States, and Asia. President Bola Tinubu has expressed deep concern about the flooding in parts of Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State, which displaced thousands of residents and affected facilities such as the post office and the Maiduguri Teaching Hospital. According to a statement by his special advisor on information and strategy, Mr. Bayo Onanuga, President Tinubu extended his heartfelt condolences to the government and people of the state, especially to the families that lost their means of livelihood due to the disaster triggered by the overflow of the Alao Dam. Vice President Kashim Shettima has assured that the administration of President Bola Tinubu will tackle the challenges of perennial flooding in Nigeria, saying that a comprehensive roadmap aimed at addressing the issue head-on has already been developed. The Vice President gave the assurance when he visited Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, for an on-the-spot assessment of the ravaging floods that have misplaced communities in the state.
President Bola Tinubu is solidly behind you, and he asked me to convey his personal regards and best wishes to your eminence. And inshallah, in the fullness of time, he will equally come to commiserate with the government and people of Borno State.
Welcome back. Nigeria's presidency insists that there are no human rights abuses going on in the country, and that the arrest of the NLC president was strictly because he snubbed an invitation by a law enforcement agency conducting an ongoing investigation. Our focus on the FCT takes a look at the events leading up to Joe Ajaero's arrest at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport right here in Abuja, his release, ripple effects of this situation, and the Serap office in Abuja being visited by the DSS.
It's been a busy week in the nation's capital, a week that's raised questions on the health of Nigeria's civic space. It started right here at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, where on Monday, the 9th of September 2024, the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Mr. Joe Ajaero, was on his way to the United Kingdom for a trade union congress event when he was arrested at the airport by the Department of State Services. A few moments later, we heard from the Public Relations Office of the Nigerian Labour Congress.
I want to tell you that the security agencies are coordinated by the Office of the National Security Advisor. That is the present practice. So it amounts to sixpence and CC to say it is not the DSS that arrested him. It is the Office of National Security Advisor. I am not aware that ONSA has a squad independently of the other arms, NIA, DIA, DSS, I mean, you name them, and others. So I'm not aware that that ONSA has a unique squad. If they do have, that would be quite new to me. So all we know is that Comrade Ajaero has been arrested and is being held against his wish by the Nigerian state. That is what I know. It is in the character of a jittery state to embark on this kind of journey, harassing people, intimidating people, in order to have the clear path of way to continue with their obnoxious policies. But I want to tell you that NLC will not be swayed. NLC will not be distracted. But more importantly, the Nigerian spirit that is inherent in all of us, we Nigerians are not going to be broken. We are facing this hardship. We will continue to protest against this hardship because this hardship is faced by the ordinary people. The people at the top, at the 1%ers, are not affected. We will continue to protest. We will continue to say no, that these policies are not helpful to our cause.
Afterwards, an emergency meeting of the Congress was called, and in a communique at the end of the meeting, the NLC stated that, quote, it unequivocally condemns the brazen and illegal detention of Comrade Joe Ajaero by the Nigerian state without any legal warrant or justification. His detention is an affront to the rights of workers and the democratic principles of freedom of movement and expression. End of quote. The Labour Union said even as it demanded Ajaero's immediate and unconditional release before midnight. The council reiterates that Joe Ajaero is not a fugitive or a criminal, and his detention is an act of intimidation aimed at silencing dissent and stifling the Labour movement's voice in Nigeria. The National Administrative Council of the NLC also demands the immediate reversal of the current hike in the price of petrol to 617 naira per litre. End of quote. The union also placed all its affiliates, state councils, civil society allies, and the Nigerian populace on red alert. Mr. Ajaero's arrest is coming just a few days after he was invited by the police for questioning after a raid at the Labour House in Abuja, where the police said it was in pursuit of a Briton called Andrew Wayne and a Nigerian, Ehiz Obinye, both of whom they say are wanted for allegedly plotting to overthrow the government of President Bola Tinubu. Muyiwa Adejobi, the police force spokesperson, accused Wayne of building a network of sleeper cells to topple the government and plunge the nation into chaos. Adejobi said the Briton rented a space at the Nigerian Labour Congress NLC headquarters in Abuja for Eva Valley Bookshop and established Stars of Nation schools as a cover for his subversive activities. Mr. Wayne denies these allegations.
It will be impossible for me to come back to Nigeria at the moment because of the ridiculous stories the police have made up. I mean, if any of this was true, I mean, wouldn't they bring evidence? I mean, it's for you. These questions are for the police. Where is the evidence?
Mr. Ajaero's arrest also caused reactions from several quarters in the civil society space, including Amnesty International and the Trade Union Congress. After 15 hours, Mr. Ajaero was released by the Department of State Services and his travel passport seized by the operatives.
To the best of our knowledge, at the time of his arrest, no reason was given, and we consider it an act of state harassment. We're in a police state, but we'll find that quite embarrassing, not because we do not know the character of the regular police state, but that the people perpetrating this evil themselves were once called themselves champions of democracy. And we have them here on video clips, chanting, saying all manner of things against previous governments at Ojota. If anybody within this administration thinks by harassing Joe Ajaero or by monitoring the executives of NLC, tapping their phones, invading their privacies and all of that, that they will take us off our trajectory, they'll be making a very costly mistake. Because Nigerians are with us on this. I want to tell you this.
There are fears from several fora that Nigeria's civic space is being shrunk deliberately by the President Tinubu administration. During the week, the Deputy Director of SERAP, Kolawole Oluwadare, had reported that their office in Abuja was visited by the Department of State Services after they gave President Tinubu a 48-hour deadline to instruct the NNPCL to reverse the hike in price of petrol.
They identified two individuals, a woman and a man, who came to our Abuja office today and identified themselves as from the DSS, Department of State Security, and they said they were looking for the director or the deputy director. And they said when they were, of course, asked by our staff who were on ground why they were there, they didn't give any particular reason. So they stepped out, the lady stepped out, made some phone calls, and then came back in and also asked if there's any other person that they can speak with, because I wasn't around. So they said no, but that if they would drop their details or even send an official invitation, then we'll be able to honor them. So my colleagues checked and they saw that they came out in two trucks. One of them was an Toyota Hilux truck, and that after they left the office, they stayed outside for a while. But after a while, they drove off. And all this happened, I think, between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. Presently, we do not know whether any of the operatives are still within the vicinity, but the vehicles have driven off. This is simply one of those incidents that show clearly, beyond a doubt now, that there is a severe constriction of the civic space. Not necessarily because of anything specifically we've said or done, but basically because of transparency and accountability. I cannot recall any specific instance that might have caused this, but it would not be unrelated with SERAP's consistent advocacy for transparency, accountability, and good governance. This is the first time, and really this is a bad thing under this present administration, which is supposed to be democratic. If they really have any grounds for have a conversation with SERAP, I will expect some formal invitations, which of course we will honor if they do that, and then perhaps we can know why. And then next steps. It wouldn't be surprising if it does, but really that would be surprising. It's a call for the president to instruct the NNPC to do what the law says it would do. And like in keeping with what we do, if the president does not heed that call, we would have gone to court. But I really would be surprised if that is why this is happening. That's totally unacceptable. That's really wrong.
In a statement afterwards, the Department of State Services described narratives that it raided SERAP's office as wrong, stating, quote, "For the records, a team of 2 unarmed service operatives were lawfully detailed on routine investigation of SERAP office in Abuja, which has sadly been skewed and misinterpreted as unlawful, harassment and intimidation of SERAP officials." The service further wishes to state that such official inquiries and liaison are traditional and does not in any way amount to illegality or raid. While it assures of an in-depth investigation of this malicious content, it sues for citizens' participation in national security management. The DSS therefore urges the public to disregard these false narratives as it restates its commitment to utmost professionalism in the discharge of its core mandate. End of quote. As Nigerians grapple with inflation and insecurity alongside another hike in the price of petrol, which will have a ripple effect on another hike in the price of food items, the trust deficit between them and the government is widening, and the actions of all parties involved will, in the coming days and weeks, be closely watched by all.
Global Rights joins us on the program today. An international human rights capacity-building non-governmental organization founded in Washington, D.C. in 1978. Global Rights works with local activists in Africa to promote and protect the rights of marginalized populations, enabling local partners to document and expose human rights abuses, conduct community outreach and mobilization. advocate for legal and policy reform, and provide legal and paralegal services. To get a global perspective of the status quo of Nigeria's civic space and the impact it may have on President Tinubu's administration, we have Abiodun Bayewu, Executive Director, Global Rights Nigeria. Ms. Abiodun Bayewu, welcome to Dateline Abuja.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk, because your NGO basically looks at human rights.
That's correct.
All right, let's take a look at Nigeria's civic space. In the past, well, since the Tinubu administration came in, are human rights better protected at this point, or is there a decline? Because from civil society, we're getting a lot of complaints about the shrinking of Nigeria's civic space. But on another side, we hear security operatives say, no, you just don't understand that we're doing our job. This is just how we work. So from an outsider's perspective, so to speak, where are we when it comes to human rights protection and the liberty in our civic space?
Well, obviously, the civic space in Nigeria is shrinking, and it's apparent to all. Coincidentally, we had published a report on the Buhari administration's human rights record called Shigi, and it tracked Buhari's antecedent through his 8 years in office. And already Tinubu is matching up and is threatening to overtake Buhari's track record. And so, yes, it is worse right now, and there's nothing to defend a lot of the stuff going on in the country.
In what ways is it worse?
It is worse in terms of the flagrant disregard for human rights. The right to protest there was intimidation of protesters, for example, by the Buhari administration. But we're getting to a point where we were in 1984, where protest has become treason, a treasonable offense again in this country. And it's ironic that 30 years ago, this was exactly what Abacha had accused Tinubu of when Tinubu went on exile from Nigeria. 30 years, roll forward, Tinubu himself is head of state and is charging protesters for treason. And I think that if as a government you have gotten to the point where your citizens are asking another nation to intervene, you need to stop and ask yourself, have we lost legitimacy? How do we regain legitimacy? Not, have we lost legitimacy? How do we oppress people into silence?
You are
because
referring
this
to
is
those
what
who are
it is.
facing, who have been arrested and are in court right now. So your organization, where do you stand on it? Because we've seen a lot of organizations frown at it, you know. But is it possible that there are other dimensions to the security aspect? Are there things that security agencies probably know about these people who are facing trial right now that civil society and citizens like me may just not know?
I don't think so. Now, for the protesters, so for example, in Abuja, where no flags were flown, at least 124 people were arrested. 22 of them were children between the ages of 14 and 17. Those children who should be in school are behind bars, many not represented in court. If that is not far-reaching, what is? Now, a lot of those people, the DSS had gone to courts and then asked for an ex parte motion to keep them for a further 60 days while they investigate. Try that for size. 60 days to investigate what exactly? And of course, the only charge they could use to hold them for that long was, of course, that they were terrorists. That is so far-reaching.
Let's move on to something else that's got civil society up in arms, really, and it's about Mr. Ajaero's arrest at the airport. So, same dynamic.
Same dynamic.
Same dynamic, but in many ways, you know, we heard, you know, this thing didn't just start now. You know, so is it possible? When you're arrested, I don't know if you've been arrested before.
Not yet.
But typically, when a person is arrested, sometimes they tell you don't leave the country. don't leave the country. Is it possible that that sort of information, that sort of, rule was given, is that sort of instruction was given, and him being at the airport means he was breaking that rule? Is it possible that that's a dynamic there? Also, with the kind of things that we've heard, terrorism. Once we hear terrorism or national security, as Nigerians, we kind of shut down. Okay, so we need to understand then what happened.
You've decided on his arrest. Now, as a competent court ordered that he cannot leave the country. I'm not aware of any court making that order. Now, if we're a country under the rule of law and we do not obey the very simple presence of the law by law enforcement itself, we're at a very, very dangerous place. You and I can be picked up tomorrow for any reason whatsoever. And it was such a shame because Ajaero was going to a World Labour Conference. Now we have amplified our civic space in Nigeria because even they have asked us the question, what exactly have you accused him of? And the only answer we've gotten so far, of course, is
the presidency.
It was an invitation, and he refused to honor our invitation, our oral invitation, a courtesy visit. He declined a courtesy visit. And so we've decided to arrest him. Well, now he's been released, but then the damage is done.
Well, I want to be able to get the response we had from the presidency. Of course, the situation actually came up at that meeting in the UK. And he, the presidency basically said, if MI5, that's what they call it, if MI5 invited somebody and the president didn't come, who is above the law?
That was hilarious.
It was hilarious, but wait, they had their point. Let's make their point.
Okay.
If MI5 invited us, invited anybody in England over for an event, you have to come. You wouldn't be allowed to travel out of the country.
MI5,
you would be monitored. They would make sure that you adhere to those rules because nobody is above the law. That's what the presidency is looking at it from. Is Joe Ajaero above the law? If we invite him and he doesn't come, he can just travel and whatnot. It's not allowed.
Nobody is above the law, but not even law enforcement officers or the executives of government are above the law. Why? Now, if MI5 invited me for a conversation, there would be a formal process of invitation. There would also be a statement given an hint as to why I was invited.
We are where we are right now.
We are where we are.
Okay, what do we do next? What's the way forward?
There's still room for the president to redeem himself, and not just the president. We have a new Chief Justice in the country. Justice Ajaero. All this is happening under a watch. The judiciary is going rogue. It's time she reins them back in. The president needs to redeem himself. UNGA is a few days away. And the president, already there were protests in London. I think he should fear what may happen at UNGA and his reputation and the reputation of his administration. When you tell people to bear it and they start to commit suicide right there, and you tell them they should not protest because you will charge them with treason, you are pushing citizens to edges, to the wall, and when they get to the wall, they will act in ways you do not want. We're in a democracy. There is room for dialogue. There is room for mutual respect. There is room for this administration to redeem itself in the next 3 years, starting today. I think that they should start.
I want to thank you so much for making out the time to speak with us on Dateline Abuja, and good luck with all the work you have ahead of you.
Thank you.
Thanks to my guest and to everyone who spoke to us today on the program. A vibrant civic space is crucial for any democracy to thrive and be regarded as legitimate. That space must be protected. Here's a thought. Instead of viewing the civic space as a threat to government operations, think about how government can use the civic space to further legitimize those government operations. It may not be easy, but that's the reason you are in government. Out-of-the-box thinking that boosts the confidence the people have in what you do as government. That's Dateline Abuja this week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kayla Magwa. See you next time.